Okay, I'm here today with Jeffrey Smith,
That one's me.
the Executive Director for the Institute for Responsible Technology. He is considered one of the foremost experts in genetically modified organisms. He's an author. He's been on Dr. Oz, a number of different shows. You may have seen him, but if you haven't, we're going to introduce you to him. And we're going to be talking about food, your health, and some things that you can do to be your own consumer activist. All right.
Absolutely.
So first of all, let's talk about GMOs. What are GMOs, and what's the impact of GMOs?
I'm going to start with the impact because that's going to get people to say, I want to know, I want to continue to listen.
Okay.
We've tracked GMOs and the Roundup herbicide that's sprayed on most of them to over 40 diseases. And these are the major diseases, whether it's autism, Parkinson's, cancer, insomnia, obesity, hepatitis C, liver and kidney problems, ADHD, anemia, all these things. And the average American eats their weight in GMOs every year. And we think it's the major driver of disease, like perhaps the greatest driver of disease in this generation. So now I'll tell you what a GMO is now that I've caught your attention.
Okay.
Genetically modified organisms, you take a gene from another species and force it into the DNA of another species, or you rearrange it through gene editing. It causes massive collateral damage in the DNA, which can create allergens or toxins and new diseases. Most of the GMOs on the market are designed by Monsanto, which is now purchased by Bayer. And they wanted to sell Roundup herbicide. Their patent was on glyphosate. The chief poison was going off patent in 2000. So they created Roundup-ready crops. So when you buy the seeds, as a farmer, you'll only use Monsanto's Roundup, and you can spray Roundup right over the top of those fields even after the crops have emerged. Normally Roundup would kill it. But here it's very easy to weed. So it's a weeding technology which ends up putting poison in the food that you can't wash off because it goes right into the food. So glyphosate, the chief poison, Roundup, which has other poisons in it, plus the GMOs themselves, which are poisonous, and we've linked them to all these different diseases.
Okay.
So, and when I'm talking about avoiding them, by the way, you don't just avoid the GMOs, you also want to avoid the Roundup. Roundup is also sprayed as a desiccant just before harvest. The oats and the wheat and the legumes, it's also sprayed in the alleys of the aisles of the vineyards, so it's in wine, it's in beer, it's sprayed on the orchard grounds, so it's in orange juice. On our site at responsibletechnology.org, you can see the test results of the residues for glyphosate. And you'll see that organic has either very little or no detectable levels in almost all the categories because organic does not allow either GMOs or Roundup. So we recommend eating organic to avoid these two toxic things. And in a film that I did with Amy Hart called Secret Ingredients, we tracked about a dozen people who got better from dozens of chronic diseases when they switched to organic. We had autistic boys who are no longer on the spectrum, infertile couples that now have kids. We had allergies and brain fog and cancer and eczema and all these things. And the doctors in the film said these are not one-offs. These are common results that we see in our patients when we put them on organic food. In fact, there's 3 doctors in the film that got real excited about when people cheat. When they cheat because they go on vacation or they get dietary fatigue, and their symptoms come back. One described pandas coming back in their son. Another described autoimmune disease problems coming back, or joint pain coming back when people switched back to the conventional foods, and then they realized for sure it was the diet that was the driver.
Okay.
So what I recommend is, and this is the basic bottom line, eat organic, but take notes. Create a little spreadsheet, and every column is a different day. And along the first column, you put your energy level and your mood and all your symptoms.
Okay.
And then every column, 1 to 10, at the top is how much organic did you eat that day, percentage. And the reason I say that is that people may it's related to skin conditions, so maybe someone takes it for their acne, and maybe it doesn't help someone's acne, goes, oh, it didn't work for me. But then you realize, oh wait, It's cured my insomnia. I didn't know that because I didn't write down insomnia.
Okay.
And I just don't have it anymore. Now, why would Roundup and GMOs be linked to insomnia? Well, if you look at insomnia in the United States, it goes up like this in parallel with the increased use of Roundup on GMOs. Okay. Now, glyphosate, the chief poison in Roundup, blocks the pathway in our gut bacteria that produces L-tryptophan. L-tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin, which is the precursor to melatonin, which helps you go to sleep. So if you're having glyphosate in your body, you're blocking the ability to produce melatonin, and you could cause insomnia. So we interviewed audiences at 150 lectures and said, what did you get better from when you switched to organic and non-GMO? And they gave us over 150 lectures about 28 different conditions that kept coming up. So we put out a survey to 3,258 people, and they got better from the same 28 different conditions. Okay. 1/3 of them said they got better from insomnia. 1/3 of them. And insomnia was rising in the population, and we understand the modes of action. We can follow the dots between the shikimate pathway in the gut bacteria to the L-tryptophan to the serotonin to the melatonin. That explains why that's one of 40 different diseases and disorders.
Okay.
But we can do the same thing with cancer. You know, the rise in certain cancers and the links of GMOs and Roundup. We can track it exactly to the animal feeding studies, to the modes of action, to the epidemiological evidence. In fact, this was done by the World Health Organization that declared glyphosate a Class 2A carcinogen. So all of these things have the evidence. We don't need more science.
Right.
We just, as you say, become an activist. As you say, you're getting people active, and I'm using what I'm using here, open-handed poker, so to speak, is disease as the motivator. Because if someone has a disease or they're trying to avoid a disease, then it's like, okay, that's going to get me to spend a little extra or to find the time to identify the organic. And put your medical budget into your food budget.
Yeah.
And put your philanthropy budget into your food budget, because you're also making it healthier for the farmers and the farm workers and the environment, because you're taking the glyphosate out of the environment by switching to organic.
Creating more demand.
Absolutely.
Now, question.
Sure.
So people do an assessment. Now, I know that the Institute for Responsible Technology has a lot of tools and videos and such.
Yeah.
Is there an assessment tool, or do people need to create their own assessment tool?
Well, in terms of that spreadsheet, that's easy to do yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to find the amount of glyphosate in your urine or your hair,
Okay.
hair's an easier, it's a longer term evaluation. You can go to Health Research Institute. We recommend them because it's a high quality quantitative test.
Okay.
But here's what I recommend. The Institute is trying to protect the planet right now from genetically engineered microbes, which is an existential threat that's beyond almost anything you can think of. Maybe it's the worst. We can talk about that in a minute. And we're struggling for money right now, so we've created a program, $25 a month. Self-care advocates can get on there and have a whole course in GMO 1.0, 2.0, gene editing, my movie Secret Ingredients that I did with Amy Hart that I just mentioned, a 90-day lifestyle upgrade. It's all in there. How to switch to organic and save time and save money. And so all that's in there. If you go to responsibletechnology.org, look for the self-care advocacy community. If you're a healthcare practitioner, go to that community, because we have additional stuff there for practitioners. So again, $25 a month minimum. And that supports us and supports you. We've curated educational elements from our over 20 years as an institute, as the leading spokespersons of the health dangers of GMOs in the world.
Okay.
And I've spoken in 43 countries and
You've done a lot. You've been the primary advocate for this. Now, question: why, with the lawsuits that against glyphosate and Roundup, why is it even still on the market?
Oh, well, the thing is this. If you've been following life, you know that the government and business are attached at the hip. So the Washington has been the enforcement wing of the biotech industry. One person who used to work at the FDA said the FDA did everything that Big Ag asked them to do and told them to do. And so that's what's going on right now, and that continues. So the EPA, for example, Jess Rowland was in charge of the cancer evaluation of glyphosate. He was a lapdog for Monsanto. When documents made public from a lawsuit, they realized he was basically working on behalf of Monsanto, trying to stop the government's intervention and evaluation of cancer. He used Monsanto's rigged research to evaluate the cancer potential, and naturally he said, oh, it doesn't cause cancer. The World Health Organization looked at all the peer-reviewed studies and says, oh no, you're wrong. In the FDA, the person in charge of GMO policy was Michael Taylor, Monsanto's former attorney, later Monsanto's vice president. He said, we don't need to test it, we don't need to label it, and he was pretending that there was no difference, and yet when you look at the documents made from public from a lawsuit, it turns out it was a disaster, and the scientists at the FDA knew that. So you have a situation where the people who are making the decisions, the government, the regulators, it's captive regulatory agencies. It's the same thing with the USDA. The last few USDA secretaries of agriculture were governors who won the Biotech Industry Organization Governor of the Year. I've spoken to some of them. They're absolutely committed to promoting biotech and Monsanto. So unfortunately, that's the political landscape. Now, we've been able to create a tipping point of consumer rejection by educating people about the health dangers. So now about half the people in the world understand that GMO foods are not safe. And that has driven a lot of dollars towards the non-GMO, which has contained GMOs to about 12 crops. However, that's changing now because of gene editing. With gene editing, you can use CRISPR labs that cost less than $2,000, and with no regulation, you can just release GMOs into the food supply, into the environment, and there's a gene rush going on. And Jesse, this is worse than just the food. An indigenous leader from in the early 90s warned that in this century we'd face the potential for ending biological evolution as we know it. And I say that's the perfect description. It's a replacement of nature by a flooding into the gene pool of self-propagating, genetically altered organisms that are prone to side effects.
Okay.
The most dangerous of all of them are the gene-edited or genetically engineered microorganisms, because the microbiome, the communities of the microbes, determine our health. They determine the health of the soil, the health of the crops, the health of the plants. They draw down carbon into the soil. The oxygen produces most of the the algae produces most of the world's oxygen. The fungal networks below the soil in forests shuttle nutrients between trees. So all of that is basically the microbiome. And we're introducing microbes with genetically engineered elements where it can propagate, travel, swap genes with other microbes, and change the nature of nature irreversibly. And in our film, on our website, responsibletechnology.org, we look at Don't Let the Gene Out of the Bottle. And that 16-minute film will describe why we may be facing the greatest existential threat of history.
Okay, so we got to check out that video as well. And
Oh my God!
and
I'm so excited! I can't wait to meet you.
of course, go to the Institute for Responsible Technology website. Check out the videos. It's on YouTube. A lot of this information is there and available, so we can be more active. Now, we spoke before, and
Yes.
you said it's not so much the laws that need to change, but people's behavior.
All right, so here's an interesting thing. When we spoke before, Jesse, and you may be able to find the link somewhere, as you're watching this, the focus of the Institute was creating a tipping point of consumer rejection and not changing laws, although we change laws all around the world. And we changed laws to be responsible for the first state regulations on GMOs in the United States, as convincing people. But the main focus was a tipping point of consumer rejection. When it comes to GMO 2.0, they're giving out CRISPR kits in high school classes. They're assigning kids in high school to create new genetically engineered microbes. You can't vote with your dollars to stop genetically engineered mosquitoes or algae or grass or trees. So now we need to create international treaties and national laws, and so the budget that we need is way bigger. But it's also less popular because it isn't necessarily related to the food. So our income has gone down. The need is now existential. So that's why we're like, hey, if we want to stay in business, we need support. In fact, we are at that level right now. As of today, we can see closing our doors if we're not getting more support. Yeah, it's that bad.
Okay. All right. So our purpose today was to introduce you, tell you some things about GMOs. We didn't get into hybrids. I wanted to.
Hybrids are not GMOs. It's not my expertise.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we want you to get more informed, involved for you, for your loved ones, for future generations. I look forward to doing more of these sessions on Zoom or something through the Holistic Training Institute with Jeffrey Smith, so that we can get our community healthier, wealthier, and wiser. It's a critical time, like never before. I know people say that about other things, but this really is a critical health concern that we can all do something about.
And I'll add one more thing, Jesse.
Yes.
So many times,
I'm trying.
collective
really
consciousness
not
will
to. I'm
shift.
not doing it myself.
Consciousness is not local or linear. It's kind of a holistic system.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you can convince a certain number of people and align them with a new way of thinking and understanding and lifestyles, it can affect almost like magic. So exactly. So we're looking to redefine our relationship with nature to become the stewards and protectors of nature. So now that we know that a high school science class can release a GMO which can take down civilization, we have to be way more careful than ever before. So it's not something to bring fear into. And so rather than feeling like a victim, feel like a victor and say, okay, I'm going to align my life around being a protector of nature. I'm going to share this information with others. I'll support perhaps the Institute for Responsible Technology and be part of the solution. And it's not like a vote, we have to get 51%. A certain small number can shift it, and what is out of the awareness now will become obvious to everyone soon. All right, man.
Thank you.
I need to get both of you.